Hello everybody and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is Wellbeing Economy Alliance Cymru. We are the Welsh hub of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which, as most of you are aware, is a global alliance of people and organisations and businesses who share an interest in systems change, most notably the change of our economic system to create an economy that works for people and an economy that serves the well-being of people and the environment, rather than an economy that focuses on narrow definitions of success and an obsession with economic growth at any cost. As the Wellbeing Economy Alliance here in Wales, we're a merry band of volunteers who convene these forums on a monthly basis to explore all sorts of topics related to how we grow and develop the wellbeing economy here in Wales. But tonight's session is an example of one which attracts audiences from all over the world, so we don't exclude anybody. Our conversations focus on what's happening here in Wales, but we welcome participation from you wherever you are, and thank you so much for joining us and joining the call. Wales has a special context when it comes to talking about a wellbeing economy. We have a piece of legislation called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and we have a government that is determined to put wellbeing metrics at the heart of decision making across Wales. But what is a wellbeing economy and how do we make it happen? Tonight's conversation is part of that programme of discussions to explore what a wellbeing economy looks like and how we get there. And tonight's conversation about behaviour change is especially timely and important. We all understand that we need massive behaviour change to bring about the systems change that we're asking for. And it will be really interesting this evening to hear from both academic perspectives and on-the-ground activists and change makers who will all be able to share insights and hopefully spark discussion as we go on. To kick us off, I'm delighted to share a short introduction from one of my colleagues here at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance Cymru. Ellie is the youngest member of our organising group, and she has prepared a video for us to give us a bit of an intro.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, as I know not everyone is joining from Wales. My name is Ellie Sanders. At 18, I am the youngest member of the Welsh hub of the Global Wellbeing Economy Alliance. I think forums like this are so important because they bring people of all ages from across the world together to discuss the important topics of the moment, things that will concern my future. Pan dwi'n dychmygu fy nyfodol yma, dwi'n meddwl am le lle mae pawb yn cael hafal ac yr un parch, beth bynnag ein gwahaniaethau. Dwi'n meddwl am fyd glân, gwyrdd, gydag awyr iach ac afonydd clir. Ond pan edrychaf o'm cwmpas, rwy'n gweld cymdeithas anghyfartal a llygred yn ein hamgylchedd. I often wonder if we should all be doing more to solve the problems I see. Are the small changes I've made, for example, to my own behaviours in my everyday life, enough to have any impact at all on the world? Yn fy marn I, mae gan bawb cyfrifoldeb I newid ei phwysau, boed yn bersonol neu'n broffesiynol. I believe that our future generations, my generation, deserve to inherit that healthy planet with the foundations of a safe, fair society to live in. I want to see that. I understand my duty is to create the change I wish to see. I hope others do too. Mae economi lles I Gymru i'r byd, lle mae pobl, planed a lle bydd yn cael ei ddathlu yn cynnig llawer o obaith, yn cynnig gyfle go iawn. Hope is strengthened with knowledge, so we would like to know, what does Wales do to actually change behaviours, to help us in our transition from the current planet-degrading, people-exploiting economic system to a fairer, just, well-being economy? Diolch am wrando. Gobeithio y gwnewch chi fwynhau'r fforwm.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you very much, Ellie. Ellie, that really is an excellent question. Hi, I'm Clive, and it's good to see you all here tonight. It has been my privilege as part of this Wellbeing Economy Cymru team to lead the preparations for tonight's forum. It is my hope that we will all be able to leave here tonight a little bit wiser, that little bit boosted, that little bit more geared to knowing some of the answers to this and related questions. I think we are living in really exciting times. Real, tangible change is in the air. Yes, we know humanity has and continues to make some fundamental errors, but equally, I think our collective survival instincts are also propelling us into a genuine new age. After the Dark Ages, we had the Enlightenment, and we have every reason to believe that today we are on the precipice of another, a time when we will leave behind the dark ages of social injustice and climate crisis and start to embrace a truly enlightened future of social values, of planetary responsibility, and where our collective well-being counts more than pounds and pence and bottom lines on spreadsheets. Tonight, we have panelists from the academic world and from grassroots activism who are here to help explore this journey. First up, three esteemed panelists from academia. Each will spend a few minutes introducing themselves and then provide a snapshot of some of the theoretical pathways we can be aware of and use to shape our approaches. To start with, I'd like to invite now Nina Ruddle, Head of Public Policy at Glendower University, to discuss some foundation theory highlighted around practice. Hello, Agrioso, Nina.
Hi, first one up, that's exciting. So welcome, it's lovely to see everyone here and so many people from around the world as well. So the timer starts now, Clive, is that right? Yeah. Okay, my name's Nina. I'm from North East Wales, Nina Ruddle. I'm North East Wales. I grew up in a place called Connors-Key. Some of you may know it. And I went to school in a place called Mold, a small market town in North East Wales. I think many of us are probably here, like many of you that are here. I was quite a curious child and I always asked questions about everything. And I think I realised early on that I was probably a very early systems disruptor. So I used to ask questions and had a real curiosity about everything, why it was there. And I think I've spent the last 20 years in social, economic regeneration, leading lots of change programmes from construction procurement into Welsh Government, leading policy in Welsh Government and leading national brownfield strategies across the whole of England. My current role is Head of Public Policy Engagement at Wrexham Glendower University. I am also the Vice Chair of something called the Public Service Boards in Wrexham and Flintshire, which are two counties again in North East Wales. And they are the entity that's set up by the legislation in Wales, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. I'm also a partner of the Active North Wales, which is a movement for change to make North Wales happier and healthier. And my most important role, I always say, is being a mum of two children, one in the both in the education system and one, unfortunately, in the health system. So I'm also in the systems and on the systems and working with the systems. And I think they all give you very different lenses on how to harbour theory and put it into practice to make change. So that's the role I've got. My role is to lead the civic mission partnership strategy in the university, and our civic mission is quite different as a university. We've co-designed our civic mission and created it with lots of partners across the whole of the region and communities, and it's about tackling and ending social inequality by 2030. Now, that's quite brave and bold and also probably a bit risky because that's something we absolutely cannot categorically do alone. So that's about the whole systems approach that we take as an anchor institution that serves the communities in our local area, but also within our region. And at the heart of all of that work we do is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and in particular, the 5 ways of working. And I think everything we do as a university in partnership in all the projects and the areas in which we work are founded in a curiosity and a real focus on being useful and helpful in the work that we do as an anchor institution. We are all about how do we get commitments for a collective challenge, which is that big, hairy, audacious goal, and not compliancy because a policy tells us to do it. It's like, how do we rally people around that cause? And at the foundation of that are behaviour change. There's 3 core areas where we've worked again with partners and communities with loads of methods, particularly public narratives, which is part of Marshall Gantz's work, and creating movements for change, which is Marshall Gantz. There'll be some links in the chat. Our work is founded around 3 focuses. One is around leadership, learning and whole systems change across the region, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Second area is about community resilience, and the third area is about keeping well. And they're all about how do we rally around these collective challenges and work in different innovative pockets of ways to really enable change and improve the lives and opportunities of the people of North Wales and indeed across Wales. So moving on quickly then, my work is really about, and I'm really interested in academically grounded theories of change and leadership and systems change, but actually how do we translate those in practice and the impact that they have. So that's where I really, that's the work I do. In the 3 areas of work, it's about understanding the system in which you're operating, of which there are many players within that system. And that is, again, work by Marshall Gantz, Keith Grint as well, about tame wicked issues, how you really understand and frame and reframe them, how we understand people and individuals, and also how we understand the collective of those groups. And all the work we do is about collective approaches to that shared challenge that we've agreed that we're going to be working on. I want to use one example to illustrate what we do and how the many theories of which, the many theories of systems change and frameworks, but I understand them, adapt them and use them in different ways and methods. And it's about mobilising the networks to create real conditions for behaviour change. And a lot of the work we do around the social movement that we've got as a civic mission is about grounded in public narrative, which again is work from Marshall Gantz about how we understand stories, how we understand what motivates us as individuals, how we connect that to the wider system, and how we mobilise people to change with that real passion and energy. And I think understanding that allows us to build trust and relationships, that allows us to work together and understand that whole systems change, but take our component part and not just jump straight to solutions, which often in public services we've always done. So I just wanted to whistle stop to our civic mission is to end social inequality. From that discussions in that leadership area of work, we've set up for North Wales and on behalf of North Wales a North Wales Public Service Lab. Now that lab is a space where we co-designed it, co-created it, where we can bring together leaders, we can develop masterclasses and that educational program to understand how we connect, understand our narratives. And it all started with 20 pioneers about 6 years ago. We worked with members of the public service boards together, and that's really instigated significant change in the way that we work together, both within the public service boards in Wrexham and Flintshire, but also across the whole of the region. We've now got over 300 partners that we've worked with that understand the theory of systems leadership, but also have an understanding of public narratives and the work around how we tackle those collective challenges together. We do things like cafes, events, masterclasses, but more importantly, we connect a network of systems leaders together across the region, which is really part of the useful work we do. One of the projects that fell out of that work, which is that commitment to be organic as well, and really, I think, be quite safe with not knowing the answer or actually exploring things and going with different ways and where the energy is. And we developed then the public service boards, for those that don't know, have to create a massive data set called the Wellbeing Assessments every 5 years. The legislation requires you to do so. And we worked together and said, well, actually, if we join together, we could pool our resources, our expertise, and we could really develop interconnectedness, understand root causes on a regional level, but still deliver locally and enable us to do that and really share, learn and innovate that benefits the whole of the region and drives that real change that the Act is about. And that is really small projects that actually you probably couldn't do outside of this network that we've created. So it's a really a great network of over 40 partners that's been set up, and it's really about enabling 3 communities of practice around research, around engagement. So we don't keep going in every 5 years going, how's your well-being, everyone? Let's tick that box and move on. Actually, we have conversations that continue throughout those, the way we work. And then also about systems change, which is about the networks, about the education, about the understanding and connecting to going where the energy is, and really harboring the real innovation that's happening and connecting it into the system, where you connect the system back into itself, which is some of the work by Myron Rogers talks about, you know, people own what they build, and you always have to connect the system back into itself because it's so complex. So so that's some of the work we're doing, and I think the real the way I see the role I've got about really translating theory into practice and understanding how we apply them and spreading that learning across the region is the Mabinogion, which is always founded in folklore and tales and stories, is to be a leader, is to be a bridge. And I think the work and the role that we take both as a university and individually is that we bridge, I try and bridge the academic theory into actually how we apply that into practice, and we really sort of drive together and work together across the region to enable that change. And I think Clive will have some of the links to some of the work we do in the lab, which is some masterclasses, we do cafes, we do all sorts of events to really bring people together and develop this connect people in a stronger way to create whole system change that benefits everyone. So that's hopefully within 6 minutes, so forgive me if I ran over.
Okay, I think Clive's unmuting there.
Sorry, yeah, thank you very, very much, Nina. And we'll quickly move on if we can. That was an excellent piece by you, Nina, thank you. We'll quickly move on to Ben Rowlands from Black Mountain College, please.
Thanks, Clive. Thank you, Nina. It's a pleasure to join you all this evening. I'm Ben. I'm here in Talgarth in the Black Mountains, part of the Brecon Beacons National Park in the south of Powys. And I've been here for 10 years, joining my wife's family. I'm originally from Wiltshire, but delighted that my children are in Welsh school, learning Welsh and connecting the landscape and the language, because I think that's a key part. And a real opportunity within the UK, where there's such proximity between the language and that all of those histories and myths that Nina just referenced, which in fact in many other parts of the world of the country are a little bit further away. So Black Mountains College is a new experimental educational institution devoted to climate action and adaptation. And our brand new degree program is called Sustainable Futures, Arts, Ecology and Systems Change. And I'm going to say a little bit about the substance of that degree in terms of our theory of change and our theory of behaviour change and how that fits into a wider theory of systems change. And if I start kind of right at the meta level, why education as a part of systems change? And the focus there, for me individually, I'm not an academic by training. I'm actually a writer and a journalist, but founded the college 5 or 6 years ago, specifically because I gave up on politics. I used to work as a speechwriter for the Liberal Democrats at the time of the Iraq War, and I was at the sharp end of those 2 million people on the streets of the UK protesting against the Iraq War, and yet not having our voices listened to, and winning the argument but not winning the vote, as it were. So the specific focus on education for me as a place where I want to put my efforts is because that's the point of reproduction. That's where a society reproduces itself. And that's also the opportunity where we have to pause and reflect and to rewire things. If we are going to make a handbrake turn, which is what we need to make, that's one of the key places where you can apply the pressure. So the kind of basic assumption here is founded in John Dewey's theories, which formed and led to the original Black Mountain College, which was an experimental arts college in North America in the 1930s and 40s. And he wrote millions of words and dozens of books, but the sort of the famous line, I think, which sums up a lot of his theories very well, is that education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. And what that means in terms of a practical pedagogy for how we teach is that you make life and everyday problems the subject of learning. And so, for example, when it comes to behavior change, and in our degree, arts ecology and systems change, the challenge of systems change and the problems of that are accumulated in our society now and how to solve them are the subject of the study. And that includes then the practice of learning and our own process in pursuing that study. So all of the tenets, which are very familiar to anybody who's a teacher on the call, of different modes of pedagogy, reflection, activist pedagogies, experimental learning, problem-based learning, any of these things, all of those come together when we make life and real everyday problems the subject of our study. And what that looks like in practice is modules which are not based on particular subjects, but are organized around questions. So our first year program has three main questions. The first one is, how do we learn the skills we need today? And that problematizes today, that problematizes skills, and that problematizes how we learn. And then the next one is, how do we understand the past? And you can apply many lenses then: environmental history, political history, critical theory, decolonial theory, feminist theory, etc. And the next one is, how can we imagine the future? And you're looking then at the constraints of climate science and environmental science, but then donor economics, behavior change, political theory, and so on. So what that asks students to do is to actually look then at their own role within that system. So if you want systems change, you need to make, I would argue, you need to make systems change the subject of the study. And what that also does is it then invites a critical examination of lots of different theories. It doesn't prioritize one over another. It allows the students to find their own frameworks and to make their own journey, and then hopefully exit after choosing a pathway in year 2 and an applied project in year 3, including a placement within an organization which is mapped to the Future Generations Act. You then leave and graduate having tested your theory of change on the ground in an organization and written about it and reflected on it, and then go into the world to hopefully rinse and repeat and keep driving change as necessary. So it's quite a simple idea, but it has all sorts of repercussions across the curriculum, and also then for the role of the university within, or we're not a university, we're a college, but the role of the college, the educational institution within its wider community and its wider network. And I'd like to finish by just stating what I see as a tremendous opportunity within Wales, because we've been approached by lots of secondary schools in our local cluster here saying, what do we do with Donaldson? Because we've been given all this freedom and autonomy, and we're being asked to teach across subjects. People who have for a career already have been teaching, geography or history or maths, are saying, can you give us a sustainability curriculum a scheme of work that we can just deliver? And actually, you've got teachers in England tearing their hair out about the national curriculum. Here in Wales, we've got this spectacular opportunity where actually, if we invited teachers and students, in effect, to do the same thing, to apply problem-based learning to real-life problems around them. And the best example of this is the Schools at War program in the United States in the 1940s, where students were invited to repair clothes, to do childminding, to mobilize the community, to do art projects, to keep up morale, to do all sorts of volunteering where there was manpower shortages. So that is education as life, not as preparation for life, in the acknowledgement of a national emergency. And if we could get an acknowledgement of a national emergency and actually fold that into an interdisciplinary learning agenda in the schools, then you have, I think, a generation that would look at the world and would look at the economy through the lens of the Future Generations Act and embody it themselves. And I think that is a very exciting possibility that is within reach in Wales that will elude England with their current national curriculum. So I'll stop there and hopefully look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
That's amazing, Ben, and hugely inspirational, and particularly the crossovers, the linkage. Thank you. And for our last speaker within the academic section, I'd like to turn over to Professor Dave Snowden from the Cynefin Centre. Dave?
Yeah, it's okay. I've unmuted now. Thanks for the introduction. I've actually got something in common with both the previous speakers. I grew up in Greek, so Nina, we probably went to the same school.
Do you mind if I do? It's really good.
So there's a coincidence there, right? But my mother, who was a good Cardiff girl, took me back to Cardiff every holiday, so I wouldn't think I was a gog. So I have this rather confused identity, which I have to live with in that respect. And I currently actually live in Wiltshire, equidistant between Cardiff Arms Park and the Royal Opera House. So that kind of like works out for me. And that's the connection with Ben. And by the way, Ben, so many people have said we need to meet up that we probably need to arrange that. I keep getting told about this. Right? By way of background, I actually studied physics and philosophy at university, which was an indulgence when I did it, but has proved useful since. And then got heavily involved for 3 or 4 years in liberation theology. Particularly working with Indigenous land rights in Australia, with the whole program to combat racism in Zimbabwe, and also with the worker priest movement in Latin America. And that for me was quite a profound set of experiences, particularly when you see a Aboriginal activist murdered in front of you in the middle of a peaceful protest. And when you go to the police, they tell you it's only an abo and you shouldn't be paying attention to it. So there are some quite profound experiences which are still within living memory that we need to be aware of. And I may come back to some of that later, but that sort of was profound in terms of where I worked. I now run a thing called the Cynefin Centre. That was set up about 20 years ago when I left IBM. And it really focuses on the application of natural science to social systems. And that's actually really important because, you know, to be honest, from a physicist's point of view, no social scientist ever has enough data to form any valid conclusion anyway. And actually, natural science teaches us an awful lot about the way humans make decisions. So I'll give you a simple illustration of that. If you give radiologists a batch of X-rays and ask them to look for anomalies, and on the final X-ray, you put a picture of a gorilla, which is 48 times the size of a cancer nodule, then 83% of radiologists will not see it, even though their eyes scan it. And the 17% who do come to believe they were wrong when they talk with the 83%. Now, the minute you get certain facts like that, and I could give you some more, then the whole idea that you can get people together in workshops and labs and ask them to think rationally is fundamentally really bad science. So you have to think about a different way of doing things, and you have to find a way that you can get to the right sort of 17%. You have to find them because they've seen something that other people haven't. And so a large part of what we did, and by the way, I actually wrote the European Union field guide on how to manage complexity in a crisis. I put a link in on there. So a lot of the stuff is in that. Rather ironic, it's largely Welsh authored after the English took us out of the European Union, but don't get me onto that one in terms of the way it works. So we've heavily focused, I think, like the other speakers have mentioned, on the whole question of narrative. There's a phrase within anthropology called homo narrans. But to be quite specific, we actively rejected, sorry about this, we actually rejected the ideas of Gantz and public narrative on the grounds that they were too heavily curated and they didn't scale. And part of my problem, if you look at the anthropological criticism of participative action research, it basically says the whole problem with these sort of events is it attracts the usual suspects. It attracts people who match the cultural attitudes of the facilitators. And I would actually add Otto Scharmager and Peter Senge to the group of effectively neo-colonialists, because their whole approach is based on a very particular value system which they belong to, and they're trying to privilege that. And I realize that will upset some people, but I promised I would do that, so I'm going to carry on. Yeah. Our approach has been very different, and it's based on a key concept in feminist work, which is called epistemic justice. So from my point of view, the key thing in the work of narrative is people need to have the right to interpret their own narratives and to understand what they mean. It's not the role of somebody else to facilitate that interpretation and therefore determine what they say. And it's not the role of an AI system or a computer system or an expert to interpret people's stories. So to give a simple example of some of the work we do, and we've done this now in South Wales, in Ferndale, in the valleys, we've done it with refugees in Malmo, we've done it with coffee workers in Colombia, and we're now starting to extend this, is we use children as ethnographers into their community to gather stories at scale into quantitative frameworks. I can show you links on this later, but we get people to self-interpret their own narrative, but into a quantitative framework, which means we can scale to very large volumes at very little cost. There's some pioneering projects in Wales on this. And the principle is if school children can gather those narratives, we can then look at those narratives. And it's possible, for example, for a minister or somebody in local authority, and this is a new theory of change, by the way, it's called vector theory of change, to look at that map and say, well, I'd like more stories like these and fewer stories like those. Now, that's a method of engaging people at scale, and it links with a complexity principle, which is we start journeys with a sense of direction. We don't try and achieve goals. This is what I call the Frozen 2 strategy. If anybody remembers that wonderful song in the middle of Frozen 2, when she says, all I can do is do the next right thing. Okay, well, in complexity theory, that's called the adjacent possible. What I need to know is understand where I am and identify where I can go next and then look again. But I need that sort of sense of direction. So one of the things, again, we've also worked on this, for example, with transgenerational pairs. And I completely agree with Ben and others. I think young people are the way we do this. And I really hope with the new Future Generations Commission, we're finally going to make Wales an example for this. I've got a lot of time for it, right? What we actually need to do is, and what we've done is to say we put young people together with people who've retired. That actually has a cognitive neuroscience background to it. The brain is very plastic up until 20 and plastic again after 45 or 50. So people in the intervening age group can adopt the prejudices of their society. So we put young, bright and gifted with old, wise and networked. And then we put them in a trio with somebody from government. We do the more like this, fewer like that. And we can effectively generate 200 or 300 micro changes in a community rather than a sort of macro government policy based on the way things work. And that's the fundamental principle. Our latest work is on trying to change the energy gradients of a system. So put simply, if the energy cost of virtue is higher than the energy cost of sin, you will have sin. And everybody focuses on saying how things should be. We need to focus on changing how things are so that good things are more likely to happen. Right? And that's kind of like what we do with vector theory of change. And finally, just to recommend 2 books by a guy called Terry Eagleton. He, like me, was a Catholic Marxist back in the 1970s in the good old days. And he's written 2 brilliant books. One is called Hope Without Optimism. And that's actually really important. Within the Christian tradition, to give up hope is a mortal sin, but it doesn't require you to be optimistic. Yeah, and I think that's a really important principle. And the second book I'd recommend for him is called Radical Sacrifice. And this is work we're doing on climate change at the moment within the centre. You need people to make small sacrifices at a local level at scale before it will be possible to make large sacrifices at a government or an international level. So until you change the dispositional state so that people are prepared to change, advocating change top down, particularly from a specific cultural perspective, is a mistake. So that's kind of like our work. We call a lot of this stuff micro nudge. I have very little time for nudge economics, and it's largely been discredited anyway. It's more yanking than nudging. The whole principle is to generate micro nudges at a local scale, with people determining for themselves what change is sustainable for their local society, rather than having people from another culture, another background, and another educational system impose their values on them.
Thank you so much, Dave. Lots of work to be leading on from that. So as Dawn said in the chat, we'll just go for a little bit of a Q&As and open discussion now. So I'll hand back over to Dawn.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. Thank you for all those thought-provoking little talks to set some context for this evening's discussion. And please do raise your hand if you'd like to come in with a question or a thought on that. I think from what Nina said and what Dave said, you know, we're really thinking about change in these complex systems and the kind of interdependency of what we do. And I was just struck by this idea of, you know, obviously we know that change starts with us, doesn't it? Change starts with our own ability and willingness to change our own behaviour. But what you said there, Dave, about the importance of change being manageable at a local kind of micro level, and then perhaps that softens us up or kind of ripens us up for bigger changes. Is that a fair reflection of what you said?
I think part of the problem you've got in North Atlantic cultures is they over-focus on individual change and not on changes in interaction. I mean, and it is a major issue, right? It's the problem with the internal development goals, which are a complete load of nonsense and a distraction. And there's a lot of, if you don't know it, libertarian far-right money going into these distraction environments, by which if we change ourselves individually, magically the system will change. Yeah. From a complexity science perspective, and complexity science is not the same thing as systems thinking, please don't confuse the two. How people interact matters more than how they are. If you want to achieve change, you change interactions, you don't try and change people. And actually the interactions then change people, but that is also ethical as well as being effective.
Okay, yeah. And so give me an example then of an interaction change.
I just gave you one. So we put young people together with older people. We link with somebody from local or national government who can make the idea work, and they can find solutions within that community. We're now starting experiments within the NHS, all right? And the principle there is what's called distributed decision making. So you identify combinations of roles, not combinations of people, which are empowered to make decisions within certain contexts. So effectively what you do is you remove a huge tranche of bureaucracy and you increase micro engagements. Now, all of that is changing the interaction design, not trying to change people. If you try and change people, you're being very, very patronizing. You're saying, I know what sort of people or what sort of attitudes you need to have. Changing interactions is legitimate. Trying to change people is very dubious.
And is it frustrating when you look around to see how little we understand how change happens and
No,
the sort of failed attempts?
If you've been trying to change society, I'm coming up to 70 in a year's time, all right? If you've been trying to change society for that long, you learn the value of hope without optimism, right? Never give up hope. I would also say that I famously said COVID is God's gift to humanity because it's an early warning device. I mean, sorry, I sit on too many think tanks. There are far worse plagues coming, and at least 2 will come in my lifetime. Right? And the whole concept of progressive shutdown is something we need to start to think about. So I think what we saw with COVID, it made people realize that actually there are what are called unknown unknowables. There are things we can't know until we encounter them. So we have to focus on creating a society level system which is resilient to change. And interestingly, sorry for my various and many sins, for a Catholic Marxist, this is odd. I spend a lot of my time with the American military, right, on military strategy. One of the things that Ukraine has taught us is you can't separate military from civilian. You've actually got to find ways in which you integrate these sort of things in terms of society. So creating resilient systems able to handle high levels of uncertainty is absolutely key in terms of survivability.
Thank you. We have a question in the room from Lee.
Thanks. Super fascinating. I'm interested to know how that plays out, or if there are parallels to be drawn with addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Whether this sort of interaction thing can work in the same way, because we have this like addiction to oil, addiction to the free and easy energy sources and all of those things, which we're all super used to, and so I just interested to know how that
point. This is my point about energy gradients, all right? If you want to change it, I mean, basically evolution aims to minimize energy. All right. The reason people don't see a gorilla is most of the time there won't be a gorilla. If you look at Klein's work, my work, and other people, we're basically saying there's no such thing as a cognitive bias. That's complete nonsense. Yeah, they're actually heuristics which overall at a species level have value. All right. So addictive behavior is what's called an attractor, where it's a pattern of behavior in which the energy cost of staying in it is less than the energy cost of escape. And sorry, academically, this is where you get into Deleuze's concepts of lines of flight and assemblages. All right. And just to get really pragmatic, one of the things I'm really working on at the moment with Maori is Maori have a concept of youth justice, which is hugely valuable because it's community-based. And we could port that across into the opiate crisis in the States, because it's a community-based solution based on interactions. And what that means is the energy cost of giving up drugs is lower than the energy cost of continuing with them. So there's some actually real, sorry, I'm getting academic. You can link strange attractors in complexity theory with Deleuzian concepts of assemblages with tropes. And if you understand that, then you start to use narrative creatively in a system, because you're trying to change those bad patterns.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate all the discussion of narrative tonight and the important role that plays. There's a question in the chat for Nina. Nina, we're wondering what you feel are the most important things that academic institutions can do to help individuals and grassroots activists engage with behaviour change. You talked a lot about, the role of, I wonder what your thoughts are.
Oh gosh, that's it. I think for me, the one thing I've found is about opening up the systems in which we work. A lot of the systems we're in are really closed shops, like public service boards are closed shop. The policy and legislation say these statutory people will sit around the table and agree what's best for, and you look at the 5 ways of working, the principles of involve, integrate, long-term, prevent, and collaborate. None of them involve citizens or individuals at the heart of it, and we do these whatever wellbeing assessments, which are a big data set, and there's that then brings its own challenges. And one of the things that we've done was we worked with an academic from Bangor University, and we tried to test something quite small, and it was about how do we work with citizens to analyse data around climate change. So working with Natural Resources Wales, we developed some data packs with colleagues, and then we did 3 workshops with a slice of society. We recruited 12 individuals from North Wales, and we asked them to come back, do some workshops, and we paid them for their time because their expertise was contributing to the wellbeing assessments, which was used to develop the wellbeing assessments for North Wales. So that's quite a nice example of where we and I'm not saying it's perfect, but unless we try these things, then we're never going to know whether they work or not. And we're trying to progress that work and evolve our thinking as well in the same way that Professor Snowden's just elaborated. And absolutely I agree with the narratives with your narratives are important. It's which way you do them and how you work them. So we are exploring different ways of doing narratives, and it's not all about Gantz. I absolutely recognise that. So yeah, that's one example. That I could use. That's the work we've done to share individuals and grassroots, opening up academic institutions to behaviour change and shift in the way that we work and think we need to work as anchor institutions. And we're not ivory tower, and we haven't got all the answers. Actually, most other people have got the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different tone of voice for educational institutions and how they
I think it's a question of going in with a bit of humility and curiosity rather than we've got some answers, because actually the challenges we're talking about are huge, and actually together we might have some of the solutions, but individually we're definitely not. So
yes, yeah, you made that point about the importance of curiosity. Thank you, Nina. Clive, I'll hand back to you to introduce our next batch of speakers, and then hopefully allow a bit more time for discussion after we've heard from a few more people.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, there is so much discussion to be had around this, but absolutely. I mean, we're very conscious of the time, and obviously we need to be looking at our activists, our community people, the people who are doing it day in, day out. So I'd like to introduce, please, Congo Clive Davis from my own neck of the world in Abertavy, who will be here to talk about 4CG.
Thank you, Clive. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi am y croeso heno. I'll do my presentation in English, although I can speak Welsh. I've got some slides to share if that helps. I don't know if I can share those. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you should have sharing privileges there. If you
Okay, let me just try and work out how this works then.
There.
Hold a second then. I'll do that now. Right, change that. I have to move things around a bit, sorry. Okay.
Yes, so for those of you joining us from elsewhere in the world, you will have picked up by now that Wales is a bilingual nation, and we're very proud of our Welsh language. So you'll find some of our speakers dropping into Welsh now and then, just to put that in some context for our international participants.
Don't worry, I won't do it anymore, unless they want to learn Welsh.
Please do, please do.
Okay, hopefully everyone's seeing a slide, which is a sky.
Yes.
Yeah, great, excellent. So yeah, I'm going to talk about 4CG basically, which is based in Cardigan, which is literally spitting distance from where Clive lives. I'm sure he visits this town often. So 4CG, just to give a bit of background about the town and myself then to start off with. So Cardigan, it's about 1,000 years old almost now. We're coming up to its 950th year. Currently population is around 4,500. Got a very creative strength to it, and it's got rich history and heritage. And in fact, part of a branding exercise we're going at the moment, we're going to be calling Cardigan the town of creativity, and 4CG is another example of why we are creative, and you'll see that as I go on. The mainstay, tourism, agriculture, main economies, very, very similar to other parts of the UK. The town, possibly uniquely for its size, has a very high level of small independent traders. There's very few chain stores in Cardigan. We've got well over 90 now. It says 90 there, but actually more than that. A bit more about myself. I was born and raised in this town. As a teenager, worked in the local clothing factory, which ceased, and now it's back up and running again under a new name called Hyatt Jeans, who's determined to get the same number of people back into the jeans factory. I used to do back pockets of jeans. That's what I used to do for my job when I was 16. Then I worked for the MOD nearby, writing software for them, and then I went off to university, did a degree in computer science, and then moved into more sort of voluntary work. I did trying to help the Cardigan town itself, and became a member of 4CG. The 6 of us started it, and then formed a town centre partnership, which I'll go on to. Got a job with Anchor Cymru, which is a local enterprise, social enterprise company. Started a company called Telemat, which still is on our operation today. I dip in now and again to see how things are going. Then I was elected because of all the volunteer work I was doing in the town as a town councillor for Cardigan, and I still am to date a town councillor. Then I became mayor of the town in 16, 17, and during the pandemic in 2020-21, which is quite challenging. And then I got elected then also back in 17 to be a county councillor for Ceredigion, which is the county where Cardigan resides. And to date, I still am a county councillor. Got involved then with a paper I wrote for the Welsh Government on how small towns like market towns can become more smarter in terms of how they operate, in terms of the regeneration and being informed with data to help them work more effectively. So a Smart Towns project was formed, which is run by Mentor More, and it still is running. And as a result of that, and some of the work I do with Cardigan, got noted for that and became a cabinet member for economy then, and still am a cabinet member for economy for Ceredigion. Also on the side as well, school governor for the local school I was raised in, and I'm also a trustee of the castle, which you can see behind me. There we go. Plug there for Cardigan Castle. Citizens Advice Bureau, operating Cardigan, and then the Civic Trust and the local community centre as well. So pretty much rooted in the community I live, as you can see. Bit about 4CG then. Cymdeithas Cynnal y Cefnogi Cefn Gwlad. There we are, a bit of Welsh for you all. So Society for the support of rural Wales, basically, and so it's there to help sustain and support the Cardigan area and the surrounding area. So set up by the 6 of us back in 2009, 2010. It's a Cardigan-based community share-owned company, so people could buy shares. That's how we got the capital to start going, basically. £200 a share. We raised £250,000, and we bought some land in the middle of the town, which you can see in the top picture there. And we started to redevelop that land for all sorts of different uses. The reason why we did it, we just felt things weren't going the right direction in the town. We wanted to try and kickstart this. So we had, as it's been said previously, a story to tell, basically. And our story hit the hit the right places, really, people's hearts. And they wanted to buy into this idea of making change happen in the town, basically. And so they invested in that then, and then we used the money to redo the buildings, create cheap parking in the town, make spaces for different types of businesses to set up, and a whole range of initiatives, which I'll go into quickly on our next couple of slides. And as a result, in the early years, we got a UK level Towns Alive Award and also Wales Cooperative Award for being innovative in terms of how we got the capital funding for getting off the ground and getting the stuff done, basically. So this is a good summary. We were featured in a 250th anniversary of the birth of Robert Owen, who founded the cooperative movement. And so there's myself and Sian there. So there's a good way of actually saying what 4CG is about. Advanced community development through the regeneration of Cardigan and the surrounding area. It was set up by a small group of locals that strongly felt that there were many opportunities in Cardigan to increase community cohesion, enhance the surrounding, and to take small steps to help improve the local economy, and that a determined and focused organisation can make a difference. So we're not big, just focused around Cardigan, but a lot of people know what 4CG is about and what we're trying to do, making small steps that get things done, basically. And here's a sort of overview of the initial bit of land that we bought. So as you can see, it's quite a big part of the town centre, but we managed to get the funding from people buying into it. So they own this car park. Cardigan people actually bought into this, and they actually own the car park. You know, a lot has changed since this picture has been done, and there's a number of businesses. We own property that people can actually use. There's low rent. We don't charge extortionate amount of rent. For example, during COVID, the 2 years, we didn't charge rent to anyone. And so that's the kind of stuff we were doing. We had enough surpluses coming in through other forms to sustain us. So one of the things we did was set up something called a town centre partnership. There was a lot of people going off in different directions or working in silos, and we thought we're too small to be pulling at each other and going in different directions. So we formed a town centre partnership back in 2016, and it helped the fact that at the time that I was mayor of the town, and then I could actually have some kudos to pull the people around the table. And as a result, we did a number of projects, and 4CG fronted all of this, working with stakeholders such as local theatres, the local government, town councils, the Heritage Quarter, and the small businesses of the street. So things like placemaking plans were done, and sort of other projects were done as well. So again, as a result of that, we had the Great British High Street Award for Cardigan for generating ideas for improving the town. And some of the examples then we'd created a town app. So if you want to download the app, go on the Apple App Store and look up Cardigan Town. It's in Welsh and in English. So any international visitors want to know more about Cardigan, just go on the App Store and you'll find out a little app called Cardigan Town. Had a range of stuff on there, and there's some data that's behind it that allows you to learn more about the kind of people that come to Cardigan. So we're using Google Analytics behind the scenes. This is my IT stuff coming out here now. The other thing I did as well through 4CG and supported with European money at the time was put Wi-Fi throughout the town. First of its kind in West Wales, possibly Wales, back in 2017-16 this was. And again, what this did was allowed us to, and there's a picture of me without the beard, as you can see. Same jumper though. My God, this has lasted a few years. Put up Wi-Fi throughout the town. Sorry, Clive?
Sorry, 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure. And then put up the Wi-Fi throughout the town. That gave us some data to tell people what's going on. Then I put Internet of Things throughout the town as well, so people can learn about how they can use IoT to learn about how shops can individually get data as well. So this is an example of that. So we measure CO2s in cafes, footfall counters in the shops, etc. And then it all became quite an attractor then for people to understand what Cardigan is all about. And some examples here of some of the shops and businesses that use the data then. So you've got Crust, you've got Crafters Coach, Studio 3, they use the data. The castle itself for measuring footfall and tourism numbers. Tonai for using the newsletter that we generate, Tom using the Wi-Fi. Some other examples then, we did a street market as well. We renamed the Town for Fun for Christmas Jumper Day to Jumper instead of Cardigan. Regenerated the maps, working with the town council. You recycled food from Tesco's to make an urban picnic in the car parks. Did a for the circular economy, we did 100% Cardigan campaign with over 60 shops doing online stuff. And then this monthly newsletter goes out from 4CG every month as well. And as a result, over 2 years while I was mayor, we opened an additional 12 new businesses in the town. And these are some of the examples we have there. And right now we're working on opening a new place to stay. We have a hostel opening in Cardigan owned by 4CG, which is the old courthouse and police station, which you can stay in a cell if you wanted to. And then right now we're working on generating housing for people using a community land trust that we're looking at to form as well. And finally, we are also looking at how we can make the town more carbon neutral by actually generating enough energy for ourselves, because we have about 5 to 6 megawatts being generated in the town area. There we go. How's that? Quick enough for you, Clive?
Well done. Thank you. The welcome, pal. Just before you disappear, Clive, how many shareholders does 4CG have?
Right now, it's 600 odd. There used to be 800, but a lot of them have cashed their shares in. So share was £200, and what people did, they get interest on their shares, so about 3-4%, and then a lot of them have cashed them in. They only get the original value back though. So there's about 600-700 left now.
Okay, yeah. Right, moving swiftly on to Amy Jones, please. Community organizer at TCC and also a former BSO volunteer. So Amy.
Hi everyone. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, all good.
Well, okay, I shall start. So yeah, my name's Amy Jones. I am from the village of Brumbo near Wrexham. So yeah, in my career or life, I've had the privilege of learning from different communities across different continents, but realised that I should be at home and I should be organising at home. So about TCC, so I work for TCC, so that's Trefnu Cymunedol Cymru, together creating communities. So TCC have been organising communities for social justice for over 26 years. We're in a diverse alliance of different groups, faith groups, community groups, service groups and schools. Together we identify issues and take action in North East Wales. We bring people together from different ages, faith, race, politics, values, to understand each other, to act together and to reflect together over time. So we provide community organising and leadership training to our members on different areas such as power, relationships, being comfortable with tensions, and strategic action for change. So as a community organiser, I support our leaders, but my motto is not to do anything for anyone that they can do themselves. So we provide spaces where different people can come together. They can understand themselves and others through talking and reflecting, and they can create change together. We value spaces, for example, where people with diverse lived experiences of different issues can come together with decision makers and together create different solutions. So every discussion is a learning point. For example, last week I was involved in a discussion around cost of living, and in the group I was in, there was someone who didn't believe in climate change, and we had a very strong climate change activist. So they disagreed with a lot of things, but we sat down and we talked, and there was an agreement that retrofitting and insulation was something that they both might be interested in exploring, and so there was an agreement to explore that together. So over the years, the Alliance have had lots of successes of making change locally. For example, it secured a building for the Wrexham Mosque and Islamic Association. It successfully campaigned for recycling locally rather than incineration, for local government to pay living wage, set up a town of sanctuary group and campaigned for a night shelter for people experiencing homelessness, and got the Welsh Government to provide an extra £1 a day for those eligible for breakfast through the Stop School Hunger campaign. Currently, through different groups, we're asking for more change in places toilets in Wales. It's been identified that there are very little, especially up in North East Wales, by our leaders. We're exploring a solar powered schools campaign, and we're asking local government decision makers to involve people with lived experience in creating a long-term financial justice strategy in response to the cost of living crisis. So that's us and me in a nutshell.
Well done. Thank you very much, Amy. And we also have Emily Lawrence, who is representing Local Motion Carmarthen, a very exciting idea of getting some money, quite a bit of money to expand Carmarthen.
Thanks, Clive. Noswaith da, everyone. Emily Adui. My name's Emily Loro, and I am a multidisciplinary, socially engaged artist and activist based in rural West Wales. The main theme of my work is the relationship between ecological crisis and social justice. I'm the co-director and co-founder of Remembrance Day for Lost Species and Feral Theatre. I think Clive's going to put some links in the chat. And I'm studying for an MA in art psychotherapy. I'm not here as an expert in behaviour change or systems theory, but I'm here because I'm part of the core group, as Clive mentioned, of Carmarthen's Local Motion project. So Local Motion is a kind of funding experiment rooted in systems change, and it's about building a social, economic and environmental justice movement by communities for communities. And it challenges typical power structures and hierarchies that can become barriers to a community's progress. It was created in response to austerity and kind of recognising how charities and grassroots organisations plug the gaps left by government funding cuts, and recognising that those in the third sector often have little power, minimal resource, and often work in silos. And those people are often picking up the pieces rather than making much needed structural changes. So the Local Motion funders, there are 6 funders, and they include Lloyds Bank, Esme Fairbairn Foundation, Paul Hamlin, City Bridge Trust, and there's a couple of other smaller funders. 6 places have been chosen for locomotion projects. So they are Carmarthen, Enfield in North London, Lincoln, Middlesbrough, Oldham and Torbay. So for those of you outside of Wales, Carmarthen is a very lively bilingual market and university town with a population of just under 14,000. It serves a very wide rural area, much like Cardigan, and it sits on the banks of the River Tywi. It's Wales's oldest town. It was the capital of Wales for many hundreds of years. It's got a really amazing, rich and colourful history. So the top 3 aspirations for locomotion in Carmarthen are for culture to create prosperity, to work with the people of Carmarthen to co-produce the future, and to deliver change in attitudes as well as circumstances. Our vision is to create the happiest and most prosperous town in Wales, sorry Cardigan, with creativity and culture at the root of improving people's well-being and delivering a more equitable and inclusive economy for everyone. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the core group. So the core group comprises people from the third sector, arts and youth organisations and educational establishments, and we have representatives from the county council and the town council in the core group. We've been working together since 2020 and it's a 10-year project. The core group has received training in all sorts of different areas, including consent-based decision-making, donor economics and co-production. We are quite, near the beginning of this journey, and we're in a sort of evidence gathering phase. So we've done a project called Llais Caerfyrddin, the Voice of Carmarthen, last summer, which is like a series of pop-up events designed, created and run by artists on streets and estates throughout the town, and really giving people in Carmarthen a chance to talk and dream and explore and kind of voice their hopes for the future and also their feelings about the town. We have a project we have 2 other projects that are kind of halfway through. So Ffordd Ymlaen, which means streets ahead, a project centering on the old high street of the town, which has been left a bit high and dry because new retail centres have been created elsewhere. There's a big Debenhams built in Carmarthen, which is now empty. Debenhams has left the town, which is problematic in all sorts of ways. So Ffordd Ymlaen is kind of bringing the focus back to the old high street in Carmarthen. And Cari Caerfyrddin, which is a predominantly Welsh language project run by Menter Gorllewin Sigar, gathering information, stories and feedback from school children in the town through creative activities. I hope that kept to time, Clive.
Thank you very much, Emily, indeed. I would like to now also move on to next speaker from DTA Wales, also part of the EGAN programme. They're tied together. Was going to be Jasmine Dale. Unfortunately, Jasmine Dale is a bit poorly, but we've very fortunately got in her stead Louisa Addis-Scott. So Louisa.
Hi, a bit about me then. I recently joined the DTA in November of last year as the joint head of outreach and engagement. My background is community development, having run a couple of charities, local charities in the South Wales Valleys, and I'm really interested in behaviour change, especially having worked on the ground with many communities. But my role, I'm here now to talk about my role and a bit about EGAN, but I'll start with the DTA. The DTA Wales is a member organisation established in 2003. It's got sister organisations, that's Locality England, DTA Scotland and Northern Ireland. And what our most of our focus is community assets, community enterprise, climate action, and we do that by working with communities to support communities. So we're really big on peer mentoring and empowering our organizations with good track record in delivering climate action or delivering business to help other groups learn and grow from each other. And I don't know if some of you know that, but we had the Renew project that was a climate action project that was spanned over the last 10 years. My colleague Jasmine Dale had worked on that previously. And from that learning, there was quite a bit of learning that came from that. And it was a couple of the key things for people determine their own priorities. When we're working on the ground, it's the people who choose and decide where they're going. And the actions that were coming out from the conversations are multiple benefits. They were, you know, they weren't only climate action, they were health, well-being, growing, the environment, everything, you know, all those economic outcomes. Everything was, you know, expertise was slow, but it was all timely and it all contributed to the wider change and processes. The community networks were really strong. And what was important was that each situation was unique, and you can rely on employing set methods. Now we use that information then to inform the design of the egging project, which is what I am working on now. So the egging, and it is a peer mentoring project, is part of the Sustainable Step Wales. We fund it through Sustainable Step Wales, and that is a climate action programme which is about behaviour change in a climate action. Now this programme, Egging, is the strand one of that, and our ultimate aim is to work with people who have never engaged in the climate agenda or have but on a small scale, i.e. it's those are the ones that are the furthest away from the agenda, and it's going to have the biggest impact on that. So how we do that is I'm head of I head up the partnerships and our facilitators. We've got 9 facilitators who work across Wales. And they're all geographically located, and what they do, I work with them, they go out into the communities, they tap into existing networks, and they look for groups from our priority populations, and they start having conversations with them about their ideas. Now some of those ideas, maybe I just want to grow a garden, and we can work with them to start, we can work with them to help them start exploring what does that mean for them, and what ideas do they want to do. And with that, then when they signed up, we can allocate a peer mentor, and that peer mentor can start gentle conversations around how is this linking with climate action. We're not there to tell them what to do. We're working with them on that process and on that journey of change. They always inform the design and development of their planning and their project. The peer mentor, then they'll choose the peer mentor, and that peer mentor will give them the additional knowledge and information. And ideally then at the end of that process, they have an action plan. And if they constitute, they haven't got to be constituted, because we recognise there are lots of people out there want to take action and don't want to actually have a bank account, don't want to be constituted, but they want to do good in their communities. So we support them to take those actions. For those that do want to take further action, we can move them then into applying to the strand 2 of the programme, which is an egging grant, which is lottery funded, and that's where some of the behaviours, the learning from our intervention then starts trickling into some outcomes associated with climate action. Now it's really interesting. The key thing for us is it is very community led, it's on the ground. We are not forcing anything on them, we're nurturing the conversations, it's all led by them. We do encourage, we are trying to create a community of action through an online, we've got an egging online platform where we've got lots of different groups signing up with the knowledge and experiences, and our peer mentors start linking them then with other people, other small groups that have taken small steps, and then they start learning and sharing. So we're hoping that by the end of our 7-year funding, that we would have created a large community of action, and then there are big conversations on the grassroots levels about the climate agenda. So that really is us in a bit of a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Louisa, and to our other speakers. It's interesting, isn't it, as we hear from different organisations working in different places across Wales. It's really striking to me what a pattern is emerging about this approach of working with local people, really not trying to implement anything onto people, but to listen and empower people to do what they already want to do, and enable that change to come from within communities who, as we know, they have the strengths and the assets that they need, but sometimes need a bit of opportunity to realise that. So really sort of strong patterns emerging as we listen to more and more fantastic examples. And it's great, I think, to witness that culture change happening across Wales. And you have to surely recognise, I think, that the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and that piece of legislation and those 5 ways of working, which were referred to right at the beginning of today's session, they are affecting behaviour across Wales, and that, you know, that the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act has required us all to undertake these wellbeing assessments, to look at things through these particular lenses, and to co-produce solutions, that kind of long-term thinking, the involvement of people. So really exciting, I think, to see so much of that in action across Wales in different towns and communities. And yeah, thank you to all our speakers for sharing. I think the mix of insight from our academic panelists and our community development practitioners has been really fascinating and sparked lots of ideas. I'd love to see some waving hands or some raised hands with anyone else who'd like to share some reflections or any questions, or share your own perspective on behaviour change. Please do put your hands up and join in the discussion. I'm trying to keep track of the chat, but I'd love to hear from people in person. Mehmet, thank you. Yes, what would you like to say? Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, I can't find the button. There we go.
I know,
yes.
it's always, that's 21st century problem. Hello, my name is Mehmet Ali. I live in Cardiff. I'm originally from Turkey. I came to Wales 10 years ago. So I work for NTW these days. So we've got a campaigning agency called BAC, and we are running the campaign for their new project called The Cost of Living. So you're all more than welcome to come and see this 3-part show in Swansea. But why I wanted to, first of all, it was an amazing forum and discussions, and we've learned a lot. So our company is based on campaigns, and our motto is make change happen. So that's very fitting for this thing. What National Theatre Wales is trying to do right now is that they have identified themselves as placemakers over the last 10 years. But now in the new decade, they want to position themselves as change makers. And this play is going to be the first step in that change making. And it's going to be not just a play, but a protest, music, theatre, and a gig, and all of that, with 3 parts, which in the first part will be authorities who has got power will meet the community members, and community members will ask them questions, and vice versa. And then there's going to be a new theatre play, and then there's going to be a gig where we're going to learn a protest song altogether. Why I wanted to take this chance to make this announcement was, if there's anybody who wants to involve and who wants to partner up with National Theatre Wales, you can come and find me. I'll drop my email here. What I mean by partnership is making your organization visible during the event itself, bringing your people to the play, or creating something, a sub-campaign together or a project together. That's all about involving more people and making change happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting to see what the National Theatre is up to, and that production looks really, really interesting. A whole different approach to theatre. Thank you, Mehmet. Barbara, I'd love to hear from you.
I cannot tell you how moved I am every time I come to your Wales events. You're doing so much and you're so powerful. Yes, I'm campaigning for maximum mitigation. I'm working at a global level. I'm involved with the UN Commons cluster, and I've put a few links in the chat. I want to see Wellbeing Economy Alliance come out with a vision that recognises that if we ever want to be genuinely sustainable, we do need to shrink the global economy, and we need to do it very rapidly, obviously in an equitable way. So a lot of my work suggests how we can offer everybody universal basic provision while we reorganize ourselves and allow people to get out of jobs that are ecologically damaging, because majority of what we do at the moment is ecologically damaging. But all the stuff that you folks are doing, and the art webinar I attended before, song and dance are not ecologically costly. There are a lot of things that we can do that are real fun. And the excitement that you folks have brought to social change is absolutely key. You're really leading the way. So that's my main message. I'm hoping you will help me to persuade the Wellbeing Economy Alliance to embrace degrowth, equitable degrowth within their vision, because it is a prerequisite to sustainability. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, there are a wide range of groups and organisations coming at this from different angles, and there's definitely a degrowth movement that's really gaining traction. And someone earlier in the evening talked about this kind of handbrake turn that is needed, and we all look for different words, don't we, to describe essentially the same idea, that the scale and pace of change that's required is huge. Thank you, and thank you for your kind words, Barbara. Colleagues of mine within the Wellbeing Economy Alliance here in Wales have been looking at this whole subject of behaviour change from a number of perspectives. I'm being nudged by Stephen to bring you in, Stephen. Share some reflections on this evening's discussion and your perspectives.
Thanks very much, Dawn. And yeah, what a great evening with some really powerful intellectual perspectives and some great grassroots stuff going on as well. What I've seen a little chat going on with Professor Snowden to my comment on a alternative behaviour change model called COM-B, which I recognise is, there are different models that are applied and different theories that will get traction in different ways. And I think my thought on tonight was the discussion was around behaviour change. I think Clive, you've done a great job of bringing all these speakers together. We're trying to think about how we as a movement encourage not just the population, but also the macro system around us to make those changes. And one of the things, and I will pull on the idea of the COM-B model, not in its kind of macro system view, but in the principle that it says, if you try and encourage change, whether that's a community or individual level, then I completely take your point, Dave, that trying to persuade an individual to change their behaviours is patronising. But if you set up a context whereby there is a motivation for change, where there is a capability for change, which is the obligation of those providing services around them, and where there's an opportunity for change, then change is more likely to happen. And when we're trying to establish the idea behind a well-being economy, which challenges so many conventional thoughts about how an economy works, it challenges the attraction of consumption, it challenges the attraction of comfort, it challenges the attraction of individuality. When we're having to change those things, we really have to think hard about how we build an environment around it that supports us. And it's incumbent upon us as activists to learn the language that makes sense to the individuals and the communities that we're hoping for change from. And I think that's a challenge for us, as to whether Professor Snowden's views are correct or whether the COM-B views are correct isn't really the point. The point is that we have to come together around a language that makes sense to those around us that aren't in the 70 people here tonight, and what a great turnout. They're in the people and the communities and the populations where we're hoping to affect change. So I think that's my reflection on tonight, Dawn. It's there's lots of ideas that have been promulgated, and it's not about one's right or one's wrong. It's about thinking how we take responsibility for articulating the impact of what we're looking for.
Thank you. And Lee.
Thanks, Dawn and everyone. There's a couple of things that always I find like reoccurring themes whenever I come against this like idea of trying to change people's behaviors. And one is like the sort of privilege that probably most of us have here to be quite comfortable in our living arrangements and have made the most of that readily available addiction to energy. And you get to a point where you're wealthy enough to start caring about the climate, the climate situation, because you can afford your organic food and your Howie's organic jeans, and if you're really privileged, your high-up ones. And so I'm interested to sort of know what people think about that. Like, it's not really a contradiction, but it's conflict almost of like, we're the privileged people starting to tell people how to do things. And I know there's an equitable thing here. And then sort of tied to that is the sort of conflict of individual like wants versus a much bigger collective need. It's been mentioned already that the collective need is like a handbrake turn, but a lot of people still want to go skiing and have nice clothes and drive nice cars. And the sort of the race to EV is a sort of prime example of like trying to keep effectively the status quo, which is my nice personal vehicle that I can whiz around at 200 miles an hour in. Whereas the actual need is for us not to be doing that. So they're like conflicts which are tied to that idea of, the individual, like, I don't really want to change. So how do I change my story if it's the story that we need to change to move from that? And also, how privileged am I that I'm even able to consider this when actually, I've got to that position. So who am I as a particularly privileged white middle-aged man to be telling people to change their stories, or at least asking them to?
Yeah, important to reflect. Thank you, Lee. And Rachel, just before we close, I'd love to hear your reflections on this.
Hi there.
Yeah. Hi.
Firstly, thanks. I joined late, but I'm delighted that I did join. I'm in Northern Ireland here. I work for the government as a behavioural scientist, and it seems like a contentious one, but my PhD my thesis is about to be submitted in COM-B and user-centred design. I know that'll not please you, Dave, but Stephen, I'm with you all the way. It was just something actually that Lee said that struck me there, and it is that sense that there is an enormous privilege that you're speaking of, and I think that's very true. I think that what behaviour change, the science of behaviour change brings, is an opportunity to identify the gaps that individual behaviour change can't fill. So if we were to look at that wider COM-B framework, Stephen, that you referred to, we can try to incentivise people all we like in terms of telling them the impact that eating healthily will have on themselves, on their body. But if we continue to see the prices of food rising, of course, people can't respond in the ways that will actually enable that behaviour. So I think that it allows us to look at the wider context and to identify what government and what we can do in a much broader sense to actually step in there and intervene and fill those gaps. I don't see the two as mutually exclusive at all.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you for being here, and yeah, great to have you with us. And yes, it sounds like there is some disagreement in the room, but really fascinating to consider. Clive, final thought from you, and then I'll wrap us up.
Yeah, just as a signposting more than anything, I promised Nina before this event with regard to a masterclass that's happening up in her neck of the woods. So if Nina, you'd just like to give a bit of a shout, and I'll put a posting in the chat.
Oh, it's fine. Just put it in the chat if anyone wants to join us. It's more than online or just connecting to lots of different people about thinking, and that's always good, I think, and exploring these issues, which is positive. So it's been a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being here. Yeah, and thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to come and share your wisdom with us. It is genuinely appreciated, and some real challenges and signposts to further research, and lots for us all to dig into when we have the opportunity. So thank you for all the links and insights shared in the chat as well. We run these events on the second Thursday of every month, or almost every month. We may take a break over Easter, and we're always keen to hear from all of you what you'd like to explore in these sessions. We've got a few topics lined up, but please do feed in your ideas. As you registered for this event on Eventbrite, you'll find yourselves on our mailing list. If you feel our future events are not relevant, please unsubscribe, but otherwise we will invite you, and we will be delighted to have you back again. So thank you so much for your engagement with us and for coming along. We find these sessions really valuable. Firstly, to find out and to develop our own thinking on what it will take to build the wellbeing economy here in Wales and beyond. We're over time. It's 8:33. I could say so much more, but I better rein myself in for once and call it a night. But suffice to say, I think it's been a fascinating conversation. There's always more to discuss, and we'll get into it more in another session. But thank you to everyone for taking part. You can unmute yourselves, say goodbye, and sign off. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.